What's up, A-Peeps? We're back. Today we are looking at Module 38 and we are going to talk about motivation related to hunger. So let's jump right into it. First, I want you to stop and think about this question. Why do we eat? Is it just because we're hungry, or is there more to it? Think about when you get hungry, when you get up and start eating, different situations, different types of food you eat. Why do we eat? Pause the video and reflect on this and then respond on Canvas. Okay, well, there's a lot more to hunger, it turns out, than just being hungry. But let's start with the basics, right? So let's look at the physiology of hunger. Cannon and Washburn did research in 1912 and wanted to find out what triggers hunger feelings. So what they called hunger pangs, right? So that's that sense of, oh, I'm hungry, right? So they noticed that hunger pangs accompanied feelings of hunger. So they did an experiment where, this is kind of gross, they had a subject swallow a balloon, which would measure their stomach's contractions. And then every time that the subject felt like they were getting a hunger pang or felt like they were hungry, they would press a lever or a key to indicate that they were conscious of a feeling of hunger. And what they noticed was that there seemed to be a little bit of a pattern there. So you see here, here's where the stomach contractions occurred. And then here's where the subject said they felt hunger pangs. So most of them line up with these contractions of the stomach. But hunger actually doesn't come from the stomach. Any guesses where it comes from? Well, this is AP Psychology, so if you guessed the brain, you were correct. So actually, hunger starts in our brain before it ever gets to the stomach. So let's talk about the physiology behind this. First off, what part of the brain is involved in hunger? Well, if you think back to our unit at the beginning of the year when we learned about parts of the brain that have different roles, we talked about the hypothalamus playing a role in hunger. So remember your 4 F's: fight, flight, feeding, and fornication, right? So we have that third is feeding. So there are actually 2 parts within the hypothalamus that play different roles when it comes to our feelings of hunger. And those are the lateral hypothalamus and the ventromedial hypothalamus. You might see lateral hypothalamus abbreviated as LH and ventromedial hypothalamus as VMH. The lateral hypothalamus is the part of the hypothalamus that will make you feel hungry. So when it is stimulated, it sends the signal to your brain that you are hungry and that you should eat something. So I like to think of the lateral hypothalamus, LH, causing large hunger, LH. So the desire to eat. Now, let's flip it around and let's say that instead of being stimulated, the lateral hypothalamus has been damaged in some way. Then that would actually cause you not to feel hungry, right? That will stop the signal of feeling hungry even when you need food. And it could lead to starvation. And research was done on rats where lesions were, so there were cuts that they would put in the lateral or ventromedial hypothalamus. They looked at the results. And the rats that received damage to their lateral hypothalamus eventually starved themselves. And then, not hard to take that and then look at the other and guess, it's probably the opposite. And you're correct. So the ventromedial hypothalamus, when it is stimulated, tells you that you are full and you do not need food. So in other words, it tells you that you are satiated. So satiated or satiety is the state of feeling full and satisfied. So I like to think of the ventromedial hypothalamus, VMH, as giving someone very minute or tiny, minute hunger. In other words, it is a feeling of satiety. So in our experiment with the rats that received lesions on their ventromedial hypothalamus were not feeling satiated. So they kept eating and eating and eating. Even though their body had enough food, their brain was telling them that they needed more, and they would eat themselves into obesity.
They won't last long the way you're eating them.
Hey, I'm creating scarcity. Drives the prices up.
Now, related to hunger is something that we call set point theory. And this goes back to homeostasis, right? Your body is constantly seeking to reach homeostasis. It wants to be in perfect balance. And so we call this our set point. Our set point is the ideal weight for our body to be in homeostasis. So then when, let's say, someone goes on a weight loss program and they're trying to lose weight, if they fall below their set point, then their body is going to make them feel hungrier, and it will make them want to spend less energy and eat more food so that it can bring itself back up to that ideal weight, that set point. On the reverse side, if your weight increases above normal, increases above that set point, then your body will stop telling you you're hungry, and it will make you feel more energetic and want to expend more energy so that you can lose that excess weight. And it is harder for women than it is for men as well. And there's some biology behind that. And an evolutionary psychologist would say this is because women are childbearers and that the body wants to protect itself and wants to keep that extra layer of protection. So it's a little harder for women to lose weight, because that is considered something that could put a baby at risk if they were pregnant. So the female body fights that a little bit harder as well. All right, and so when it comes to hunger, there are a lot of different hormones, endogenous chemicals, right, in our body that relate to hunger. So here they are. There are 5 right here that you want to know for your AP test. They are ghrelin, insulin, leptin, orexin, and PYY, or peptide YY. So basically, ghrelin stimulates your appetite, so it will cause you to increase your appetite. And this is released in the body when the body is in need of food. So it's actually a hormone that's released within the stomach that carries that hungry signal to the lateral hypothalamus to tell it to eat. Insulin is a hormone that is released by the pancreas, and it regulates our blood sugar, or glucose, in our blood system. So that you might remember from when we learned about the endocrine system. Leptin is a satiety hormone, so it is secreted by our fat cells. It travels to the ventromedial hypothalamus to tell the body that we have enough energy, we are good, we are satiated, stop eating, right? We're fine. Orexin will, again, like ghrelin, will stimulate the appetite. So this one, however, is produced by neurons within the lateral hypothalamus. And orexin also plays a role in sexual behavior and wakefulness, in other words, arousal of all kinds. And then last but not least, another satiety hormone, similar to leptin, is PYY, or peptide YY. This is actually located within your digestive tract, and it is what sends the signal to the brain to say, we're not hungry, stop eating, we're good, we are full. So as you can see, the physiology of hunger is a combination of body chemistry and our brain. So we have glucose, which is our blood sugar, is a major source of energy. And when our glucose levels drop, when our blood sugar gets too low, then our brain is signaled to trigger us to be hungry so that we will go eat, and then we will raise our blood sugar back up. Also, there are some internal and external cues that play a role in this. So your internal cues are that body chemistry, so all those hormones moving around. And then the external cues are signals and situations that we link with food. So for example, the time of day. It's lunchtime, it's breakfast time, it's dinner time. Certain smells, when we smell yummy food. My husband just heated up pizza earlier and I was dying because I had already eaten. I didn't need food, but man, did that smell good, and it made me want to eat. Sometimes we associate it with specific people. My mom is a great cook. When I go visit my parents, I know my mom's going to cook me a lot of food. We even associate it with certain emotions. So some of us eat when we're upset, eat when we're stressed, eat when we're sad. And that can be a trigger for hunger as well. So all in all, our body chemistry plus our environment can affect our hunger. It can determine the when we eat, and it can also determine what we eat. So now we're going to shift into the psychology of hunger. What is going on psychologically that causes us to feel hunger or affects our hunger in different ways? So let me ask you this question. What kind of food do you crave when you're stressed? Pause the video and go to Canvas to respond to this question. Okay, personally, when I'm stressed out, I like either a lot of carbs, like a big fat juicy cheeseburger, or sometimes I just want chocolate. Chocolate is a go-to for me. Some psychological things that can affect our hunger. One is related to sensation, right? So our sensory experience can affect our hunger. For example, like I mentioned before, smelling food can often make us hungry, especially if it's food that we like and it smells really good. But smelling something gross can have the opposite effect, right? You walk by a dumpster and you suddenly lose your appetite because, ugh. Okay, so smelling something disgusting can trigger your hunger to shut back down. We also can be affected by learning, specifically through conditioning. For example, if you think of classical conditioning, we can associate food with a certain time of day, like 6 p.m. is dinner time. Maybe you have a parent that's like 6 p.m. is dinner, you better be home by 6 or you don't get dinner, and it's the same every night. So you have begun to associate dinner time is 6 p.m. and so you eat at 6 p.m. Or maybe it's associated with a certain activity. A lot of people suggest if you're trying to lose weight to be very careful about snacking when you watch television, because a lot of us will binge watch Netflix, and if we're eating the whole time, then we're not going to do so hot on our diet. Another concept related to learning and hunger is the Garcia effect. This also goes back to classical conditioning. So the Garcia effect refers to taste aversion. And remember, if we're aversive to something, it means we don't like it, we don't want it, we're avoiding it. So we can actually develop taste aversion if we say eat something and then that night we get really sick. Or we associate that food with that getting sick, that memory or that feeling of throwing up or being sick. So for me, I have this with steak, sadly. I had really great steak one night, and then that night I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just vomiting. And ever since then, I just associate steak with that experience and I don't want it anymore. For my twin, it's Sprite. She had to have a procedure done once that was very uncomfortable. And before the procedure, all she was allowed to drink was clear liquids, and they had her drink a bunch of Sprite. And it was just, the experience was very negative. She did not enjoy it. And so now she associates Sprite with that procedure that was very uncomfortable. And so she doesn't like Sprite. Now, culture can also have an impact on what we eat and when we eat. So culture influences our tastes, our cravings, our appetites, right? If you go to France, the portion sizes are much smaller than in the Americas, especially North America. But also the types of things we like to eat. So what is a delicacy in one culture might be seen as disgusting in another culture.
Oh, sneak surprise.
What's the surprise?
So for example, deep fried tarantula is actually a common delicacy in Cambodia, and snake wine is common in Vietnam. If I walked into a fast food place and they had deep fried spider, oh heck no, I'm out of there. But someone overseas probably wouldn't even think twice. They think, great, yummy, right? I've traveled to places around the world where they have some very interesting foods that I was not a fan of or thought, what? One of my favorites is in Ecuador. Guinea pig is a delicacy. So never thought that I'd hear the day. There are also situations that can influence our eating habits. So think about these questions. First, when are you likely to eat more? What social situations might make you more likely to eat? When are you likely to eat less? I always think about things like parties. Going to a party, I always know I'm going to cheat on whatever diet I might be on. If I'm trying to eat better, but I'm about to go to a family holiday or someone's birthday party, I'm going to eat a lot of junk food, and I kind of let that be my cheat time. I'm less likely to eat in certain situations. So for example, I remember being young and going on first dates and not wanting to eat a giant juicy burger and just eat it really fast like I might by myself in front of a new person that doesn't know me very well. I might be more likely to want to be like this person and order a salad. So I think this is hilarious because this is so how my heart is. It's like, a salad? Yeah, no. I'll have a steak, a rack of ribs, pasta, extra garlic, french fries, right? So But some of us eat differently in different situations. We might try new foods, or we might eat more or less based on the situation that we're in. Now, let's talk about eating behaviors when they get out of balance. There are some sensitive topics to consider when learning about hunger. Your textbook will talk a little bit about conditions like anorexia nervosa. Here, I'm just going to talk briefly about obesity and tell you what it is and how it relates to hunger motivation. If someone overeats too often, they might become severely overweight and they might experience obesity. So this is what happens when someone reaches this stage of being obese. Our bodies, we tend to store fat because fat is what our body uses for energy. And this is something that developed when we were an early species, right? This is evolutionary psychologists would say this developed when food was scarce. So think cavemen who are having to spend every waking moment trying to find their next source of food. Nowadays, because food isn't scarce, these genes, that the genetic makeup that adapted to that situation is no longer necessary. And it's become what we would call maladaptive, meaning it's actually harmful now instead of being helpful in survival, because now we don't need that, but it hasn't quite gone away. So most of us struggle with that. So there are a lot of different causes of obesity. It's not always that someone has no control over eating too much. It could be related to a lot of things. So it could be related to their body's set point and their level of metabolism, how well their body processes fat and foods. It could be a predisposition that they are genetically predisposed to obesity. Maybe it runs in their family. It could be related to sleep loss or depression as well. As we've learned in the past, sleep disorders such as sleep apnea can actually cause obesity. And they can be caused by obesity. So there can be a lot of things tying into that if someone is experiencing obesity. All right, so that wraps up our discussion of hunger motivation. And our next topic is going to be an interesting one, which will be sexual motivation. So join me next time when we talk about that. Bye guys, stay warm. I'll see you later.